My ex-wife is in the Bahamas with her affair partner while I mourn our 6-year-old son's passing. The morning after the funeral, I sat in his room for 3 hours. I didn't plan to, I just walked in and never left. The light in there was different, softer, almost bruised. The kind of morning light that drips through pale curtains and lands in strips on the floor like someone laid tape down and then changed their mind. I didn't touch anything. The Spider-Man blanket was still bunched the way he left it, half off the bed, Legos scattered beneath like landmines. There was a sock under the dresser, a tiny blue thing with a hole at the heel, and I stared at it like it was a relic, sacred and absurd all at once. There's this lie people tell you that grief hits like a wave, that it knocks you down, sure, but then it recedes and you can stand up again, coughing and soaked but whole. No one tells you about the stillness, about how time just folds like laundry you forgot in the basket. Nothing moves, and yet you're exhausted all the time, like mourning is some kind of full-body coma you don't remember falling into. The funeral was a blur. I don't remember the service. I remember the flowers were yellow because she said yellow was the color of life. I remember the preacher said his name wrong at one point, called him Elijah instead of Elias. I remember clenching my jaw so tight my molars ached for a week. And I remember she cried without tears. Samantha had this way of performing sadness. She always had, even back when we were teenagers, and she used to argue with her mother just for the drama of it. She cried like someone trying to remember how crying worked. All the right gestures, but none of the gravity. At the funeral, she wore a white dress, flowing, sleeveless, like it was a garden party. She said she wanted to celebrate his light. I didn't fight her on it. I didn't fight her on anything by then. I was so numb I could barely button my own shirt. I stood next to her and let people offer condolences like they were handing me coats I didn't ask to carry. I nodded, I said thank you, I shook hands. I don't think I looked anyone in the eye. We had barely spoken since the hospital. Elias died in my arms. There's no poetry in that. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't cinematic. It was choking in sweat and beeping monitors and nurses rushing and my son, my boy, gasping like a fish on a dock, eyes wide and panicked. One minute he was watching Paw Patrol on a tablet, the next minute he was gone. The tumor had grown faster than they expected. Glioblastoma. They told us it was rare in kids, aggressive. The kind of word that doctors say with their hands folded and their lips tight, like they don't want to scare you even though the floor is already gone under your feet. The last thing he said to me was, "Daddy, my head feels like thunder." After he passed, she collapsed in the hallway, on her knees, not in the room with me, not with him, she couldn't even look at him. That's when something began to fracture between us. Not all at once, it was slower than that. A drip, a leak, a crack that spidered outward through everything we'd built. I needed her to see him, to hold his hand with me, but she wouldn't or couldn't, I don't know which is worse. Afterward, we didn't scream at each other. We didn't fight. That would have made sense, and grief makes no sense. Instead, we floated in opposite directions in the same house like two ghosts pretending the place was still warm. She kept buying groceries we didn't eat. Milk expired untouched, cereal boxes stacked up. She made pancakes one morning and cried into the batter. I watched her from the hallway and felt absolutely nothing. I stopped sleeping in our bed. I moved to the couch the week after the funeral and told myself it was temporary, but I never went back. It smelled like her shampoo. It made me feel like I was suffocating. One night I heard her laugh on the phone. It was maybe 2 a.m. I hadn't slept. I didn't sleep much at all those weeks. I'd walk the neighborhood in my hoodie and socks like the darkness might forgive me, but that night I stayed and I heard her. It wasn't a sad laugh, it was flirtatious, sharp, like a knife edge catching the light. I knew then not because of the laugh exactly, but because of what it didn't sound like. It didn't sound like a mother who had just buried her child. It didn't sound like grief, it sounded like relief, like she'd found a way out. I didn't confront her, I just filed it away, like another death I had to carry silently. Then the photo came, I wasn't even looking. I'd picked up her phone to silence an alarm. It was glowing on the kitchen counter, 6:44 a.m., too early for anything. The screen lit up with a notification, a message from someone named Jay. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The photo showed her smiling in the ocean, her legs around his waist, arms around his neck, mouth open in a grin I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. Her skin glowed like she'd finally remembered how to be alive. I stood there, barefoot on the tile, staring at the screen like it had betrayed me, like it had spoken a truth I wasn't ready to know. The worst part wasn't that she was with him, it was that she looked happy, genuinely, undeniably happy. I wanted to smash the phone, I wanted to scream. Instead, I just put it down, quietly, face up. Let her see that I saw. I didn't leave a note, I didn't pack a bag. I just walked outside and sat in the middle of the backyard with my knees pulled to my chest. The grass was cold and wet. Morning dew soaked through my sweatpants. I could hear birds. The sky was still gray with dawn, and everything felt too bright and too dark at once. That's when it all broke, not like a glass shattering, not dramatic, not loud. It broke like a dam cracking in silence, like water rising slowly until your chin is under and you don't remember how to swim. I stayed there until the sun burned through the clouds, until the neighbors were starting their cars and kids were climbing onto buses and the world had moved on. I stayed until I couldn't feel my toes. When I went back inside, she was gone. There was a note on the fridge, a post-it. It said, "I need to feel something else. I'm sorry. Mail goes to the villa until the 24th." That was it. No explanation, no conversation, just coordinates for her escape. So I didn't follow her, I didn't reply, I didn't tell anyone. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, and stared at the wall until night returned. And in that darkness, in the flatlined silence of our home, I finally let myself whisper his name again, just once, just to remember what my voice sounded like when it was still capable of love. Elias, I started drinking his apple juice. That's the first thing I remember clearly after she left. There were 3 juice boxes left in the fridge, the kind with the foil top and the tiny plastic straw glued to the side. I don't know why I grabbed one. Maybe I was trying to feel close to him. Maybe I was punishing myself. But I sat on the kitchen floor in yesterday's clothes, back against the dishwasher, and drank it in 2 long pulls. I didn't taste anything, just cold and sweet and wrong. Then I cried hard, no buildup, no warning. It hit like a seizure, violent and loud and deep from the ribs, and I kept drinking the juice while I cried like some deranged parody of a parent. One hand holding the box, the other pressed over my mouth like I could stop the grief from leaking out. My body didn't feel like mine anymore. It belonged to the grief now. I was just a passenger. The silence in the house after she left was so loud I could hear the blood in my ears. Her absence wasn't peaceful, it was radioactive. She'd taken clothes, her laptop, one of the beach photos off the wall, left behind her scent in the pillows and the faintest ghost of her voice in the bathroom mirror. For a while, I still half expected to hear her footsteps in the hall. I'd hear the wind creak a floorboard and tense up like a stray dog. I hated myself for it. Hated how I still wanted to see her, just so I could yell or maybe beg or maybe collapse. I didn't know how to do this. Grief doesn't come with instructions. Everyone says stupid things like take it one day at a time or he's in a better place or this too shall pass, and you want to scream because there is no version of reality where your 6-year-old son is supposed to be ashes in a ceramic urn shaped like a lighthouse. I stopped opening mail, the bills piled up on the counter next to the untouched lasagna Pam left. She was our neighbor, the kind of well-meaning woman who always sent Christmas cookies even when Elias got diagnosed and we weren't answering the door. She knocked once a day for a week after the funeral. Each time I stayed silent, frozen just behind the door, waiting for her shadow to leave. I was too tired to pretend I could accept kindness, too angry to let anyone witness me like this. There was a moment, maybe the lowest, when I sat in the bathtub with all my clothes still on. I turned the water on and let it run until it overflowed. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I wanted to feel submerged. Maybe I wanted the house to drown with me. The water was cold by the time I realized I hadn't moved in hours. I got out only because my fingers went numb. After that, I started walking. It wasn't intentional. I just left the house one evening and didn't stop. I walked through the neighborhood with my hood up, avoiding people, letting the wind cut into me. I counted streetlights. I stepped over sidewalk cracks. I looked into people's windows, their ordinary lives glowing golden through curtains, and hated them all for having something I didn't. Well, eventually, I made it to the park. The same park where Elias used to play on the tire swing. The same bench where I used to sit with a thermos of coffee, watching him with that stupid crooked helmet he wore when he first got sick and the steroids made him dizzy. I sat on that bench for a long time. Someone had carved initials into the armrest, M+L, and I traced the grooves with my thumb like it meant something. I think it was that night that I looked up grief groups on my phone. Not because I believed in healing, but because I needed something to keep me from going back to the bathtub. The first session was over Zoom. I almost didn't log in. I hovered over the join button for 15 minutes, just staring at my own reflection in the black screen. I looked like a man being held hostage by his own face. Sunken cheeks, days of beard, eyes too red to hide. I joined with my camera off. 10 other faces, most of them older, hollowed. Everyone had lost someone. Some spoke quickly like they'd rehearsed their pain, others stammered. I said nothing the first time, just watched. Then Marcus spoke. He was about my age, maybe a few years older. Salt and pepper beard, big sad eyes. He talked about his daughter, said she died in a car crash a week after her 7th birthday. I used to think the pain would shrink, he said, that it would get smaller if I just waited long enough, but it doesn't. You just grow around it like scar tissue. I don't know why it hit me so hard, maybe because he didn't try to dress it up. No platitudes, no silver linings, just this raw, quiet truth. You grow around it. You make space for it inside you and keep living anyway. After the call ended, I wrote it down on a napkin. I didn't have paper. I used a fridge magnet shaped like a turtle to keep it in place. I didn't sleep that night, but I also didn't cry. The next morning, I cleaned the living room, just the coffee table really, but it felt like something. I folded a blanket, threw out the spoiled lasagna, opened a window. It's strange, the things that feel like victories. I answered a text from my sister. I changed the sheets. I stood in Elia's room and didn't fall apart. I walked past the playground without holding my breath. I even cooked once, not well, just scrambled eggs, but I ate them standing at the stove, plate in hand, like I didn't deserve a chair yet. The fridge got emptier. I didn't buy more juice boxes. Instead, I drove to the beach one Sunday. I brought Elia's toy truck, the red one with the missing wheel, and walked out onto the wet sand just before dusk. The sun was setting behind me, and the ocean was doing that quiet, breathing thing it does when the wind dies down. I held the truck in both hands, not knowing what the hell I was doing. Then I knelt and placed it at the edge of the water. The first wave barely touched it, the second pulled it forward. On the third, it floated out just enough for me to feel like something had shifted, not closure, not peace, but a release, like letting go of a breath I'd been holding for too long. I stayed until it was out of sight, then I turned around and walked home. I didn't tell anyone. That's how it was for a while, quiet movement, small rituals, survival on a minute-to-minute basis. Some nights I still ended up on the kitchen floor with one of his old shirts clutched to my chest, but I stopped apologizing for it. Grief had moved in, and we were learning how to share space. I didn't forgive her, I didn't even think about her most days. The memory of her had gone flat, like a song you used to love until it got overplayed. What surprised me was how the edges of pain started to blur. It didn't go away, it never went away, but it stopped screaming, it just hummed beneath everything. A low frequency I could almost live with. Almost. And that was enough for now. She knocked on the door like it was still hers, like she hadn't vanished without goodbye, like months of silence could be broken with 4 knuckles on wood. I didn't answer right away. I stood in the hallway, watching her shadow shift through the frosted glass panel, her figure distorted and ghost-like. My hands were damp. I hadn't expected to ever see her again, not really. I'd imagined it, sure, hundreds of versions, her crying, her screaming, her begging. But none of them had sounded like this, a quiet knock, almost polite. When I opened the door, I didn't speak, just looked at her and waited for whatever lie she'd been rehearsing on the flight back. She looked older, I don't mean in a cruel way, just softer around the edges. Her tan was fatting. She wore a beige coat like she wanted to blend in. No makeup, sunglasses, even though the sky was gray and drizzling. Her lips parted like she was about to say something profound, then she smiled. Hi. I almost laughed, hi. She blinked, and I saw her throat move like she was swallowing back the version of herself she thought would work here. I wanted to talk, she said, just for a minute. I don't know why I stepped aside. Habit, maybe, or morbid curiosity, or the part of me that still needed her to see what she'd left behind. She walked in like she didn't know where anything was anymore, like the house had reassembled itself in her absence. Her eyes flicked to the framed photos on the wall, Elias with cake on his face, Elias in his dinosaur pajamas, Elias holding a sparkler on the 4th of July, and I watched her flinch just slightly like they stung. You haven't changed anything, she said. Well, I did, I said. I stopped putting his toothbrush back in the cup. Island. She sat down on the couch, the same one where she used to curl up with him and hum lullabies when his fever made him too dizzy to sleep. The indent she left was still there. I stayed in Chilum, she said, almost too fast. After the villa, I didn't plan to, I couldn't come back, not yet. Well, I didn't ask. As I know. We sat there, she was trembling barely perceptibly, like the calm surface of a pool with something thrashing far beneath. I wasn't with him when he died, she said. I should have been, but I couldn't make myself go in. I turned my face away, not because I didn't want her to see me cry, but because I didn't want her to see me not cry. I was holding him, I said. He was scared. He asked me why the room was buzzing. I think he heard something in his head, pressure maybe, then he stopped. I heard her breath hitch. I wanted to go in, she whispered, but I thought if I saw it happen, if I watched him go, I'd never come back from it. You left anyway, I said, louder than I meant to, so what the fuck was the difference? Her mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't know how to stay, she finally said. You were so still, like the grief made you solid and I was just breaking apart. I stood up suddenly, my body couldn't take the stillness anymore. You think I wanted to be still, you think I chose this. Every second of every day since he died, I've been waiting to break. But someone had to hold it, someone had to keep the house from collapsing. Her eyes filled, but no tears came. I felt like I was drowning, she said. I stared at her, then you should have held my hand. There it was, the thing I didn't even know I'd been waiting to say. The thing that cracked open something deep in my chest. My voice didn't rise, it dropped quiet, bare, the marrow of truth. She looked at me then, really looked. And for a second we were back in the delivery room 7 years ago, covered in blood and joy and awe. I remembered how she had looked down at Elias and whispered, "He's real," like she hadn't believed it until he was in her arms. She wasn't a villain, I knew that. She was human, weak in the exact places where I had forced myself to become steel, and that didn't excuse her, but it explained her. You looked so whole at the funeral, she said. I didn't know how to touch you, you were just gone. I was whole, I said. I had to be for him, for you, for everyone who kept telling me to be strong. We were both crying now, softly, in the kind of way you cry when you're too tired for sobs. I still dream about him, she said. Oh, I don't. That surprised her. I sat back down, not next to her, but close enough that we shared the same gravity. My brain protects me, I said. Every time I get close, it redirects. I see his face in the corner of my eye and then it's gone, like I'm being spared. She nodded. He would have loved the ocean. He was afraid of jellyfish, I said. We both laughed, a real laugh, short but honest. Oh, and then she said it. Well, I'm sorry. Just that, no qualifiers, no explanations. Not I'm sorry I left or I'm sorry I broke, just sorry, full stop. I closed my eyes. As I know, there was nothing left to fix between us. That part was dead, buried alongside the child we once made out of joy and sweat and wonder. But there was something sacred in the truth, in the acknowledgement. I'm moving, I said, not far, just somewhere new. The house is full of echoes. She wiped her cheek. Can I visit him, the cemetery, I mean? He's not there, I said. She looked at me, puzzled. I spread his ashes at the beach, I said, the one with the rocks he used to climb. Her mouth trembled. I wish I'd been there. You weren't, I said. Silence again. This one felt cleaner. I should go, she said, standing slowly. I nodded. At the door, she paused. You were a good father. I looked at her. And you loved him, I said, even if it looked different. She stepped outside. Rain was falling harder now. She didn't have an umbrella. She walked away without looking back. And I stood in the doorway, heart heavier but cleaner somehow. The confrontation hadn't freed me, but it had named something, named the absence, named the grief, named the truth that we both failed in different ways and that we had both loved him still. When I closed the door behind me, I didn't lock it. I just breathed and sat with the hum of the house. Quieter now, but not empty. It's strange how healing doesn't look the way you think it will. You imagine it's this dramatic thing, an awakening, a sunrise moment, some cinematic swell of music as you decide to start over. But for me, it looked like buying new dish soap, switching to a brand that didn't smell like the one she always used. It looked like putting the urn away, not out of shame or forgetfulness, but because I finally realized he wasn't in there anymore. It looked like walking into his room and breathing without bracing. The quiet didn't go away, but it softened. Some mornings I still wake up reaching for a sound that isn't there, the thunder of little feet, the shuffle of cartoons echoing down the hallway. But now when I sit on the edge of the bed, I don't feel like I'm dangling over a cliff. I feel still heavy, sure, but balanced, a weight I've learned to carry. I started seeing people again, not friends. I don't know if I have any of those anymore, but people. The barista at the corner cafe who knows my name now, Marcus from group who meets me for a walk every other Saturday. We don't talk about our kids, not directly, but we talk around them, about the garden he's building, about the dreams we still have, the ones that feel stupid and the ones that don't. He's the one who gave me the basil starter plant. I almost killed it twice. Too much water than not enough, but somehow it held on. I keep it in the windowsill, right where Elias used to line up his dinosaurs. That's another thing I stopped doing, apologizing for the days I feel okay. For a long time, I thought moving on was betrayal. Like if I smiled, it meant I'd forgotten, or worse, forgiven the universe. But I haven't. I still hate whatever cosmic lottery gave a 6-year-old a death sentence. I still have questions that have no shape, no language, but I've stopped demanding answers from a sky that doesn't speak. Now I just live. One Wednesday afternoon, I was folding laundry, something I'd avoided for months, and I found one of Elia's old socks tucked deep in the corner of a fitted sheet. A tiny striped thing, faded and pilled from the dryer. I held it in my hand for 10 minutes, just sat on the floor holding it, and this thought came to me, quiet but steady: I survived this. Not I'm better, not I'm healed, just I'm still here. There's a kind of dignity in that. The grief doesn't surprise me as much anymore. It still shows up in songs, smells, the flash of a child's face in a crowd. But now when it comes, I let it. I make room for it. I pour it a cup of tea, sit with it, and let it pass. It doesn't own me anymore. I repainted his room pale green, not to cover him, but to start again. The Spider-Man sheets are in storage. I kept a few of his toys. The rest I donated, slowly, one box at a time. I wrote a note with each donation, told the new kids who held them to love them hard, to make noise, to make memories. Sometimes I talk to him just in passing, like when I burn toast or when the basil starts to flower. You'd hate this sandwich, I'll say, or look at this dog, he's got your exact expression. It's not madness, it's memory made breathable. Pam came by last month. She brought ginger snaps and asked if I'd help her fix her porch light. She didn't mention Elias, I didn't mention Samantha. We sat on her stoop and watched the sky change color. She told me about her daughter in Texas, how she's pregnant again. I smiled and said, that's beautiful, and meant it. 'Cause I'm not angry anymore. Not at her, not at Samantha, not even at myself. That doesn't mean I don't feel it sometimes, the echoes of that anger, but they don't drag me under now. They flicker and pass. I still go to the beach sometimes, the one where I let the toy truck go. One time there was a little boy there, maybe 4 or 5, building a crooked sandcastle with his dad. I sat nearby, pretending to read, but mostly just watching. At one point the boy looked up and grinned, his teeth missing in front, and for a split second my chest seized. Then the dad called out his name, Leo, and it broke the spell. I breathed, I smiled, I left. Well, I didn't cry. I started sketching again, too, just little things, hands, birds. Once I drew Elia's shoes from memory, the ones with the Velcro straps and the scuffed toe. It felt good to remember something specific. Grief paints in broad strokes, memory brings back the details. A week ago, I cleared out the last of Samantha's books. The spine of the bell jar was cracked down the middle. She used to read it in college when we were first dating. She said it helped her feel seen. I remember holding her as she cried over the last line. I boxed the books and left them outside the apartment building where someone always leaves things like that, half-broken chairs, old DVDs, mismatched plates. I didn't leave a note. I don't think she's coming back, not physically, not metaphorically, and that's fine, that part of the story is over. What happened between us is something I can hold now without it cutting through skin. I'm not ready to date, people ask sometimes at the group or Marcus gently, but I'm not there. Not because I'm afraid, just because I'm learning how to be whole alone. It's slow work, but it's honest. Some days that feels like enough. Other days I still feel the ache of his name in my chest, but even that is quieter now, less scream, more sigh. The basil's doing better these days. I repotted it, gave it space. I think that's what I'm doing too. Making space. For the grief, for the memory, for what comes next. No grand revelations, no finish line, just mornings where I make coffee and stand in the window while the world stirs awake. Just evenings where I read until I fall asleep on the couch. Just this life. Mine. Quiet rebuilds. And somehow, against all odds, still unfolding.